That's a tough question. And the reason why I say it's tough isn't because I don't want to answer it. It's because that'll be easy to say. No, it's tough because data is evaporating. That's why. The data we used to depend on. I mean, I cringe when I think about just maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I was on stage talking about how you can track every click from the when you first meet a customer down to a deal. And I had it all mapped out with UTM codes and all kind of cookies and everything. I'd be embarrassed to show that now because the data just isn't there, and it's shrinking. And too often, departments hang their hats on data that you know won't be here 6 months from now, and they have to move the goalpost. And then you have a marketing team who executives say, "Oh, well, they always move the goalpost. They really don't know what they're doing." The fact is, they're measuring what they have at that moment, but then Apple says we're going to block cookies. Okay, the goalpost moves. Google says we're not going to have cookies. Goalpost moves. Google says, okay, psych, good cookies are going to stay. Goalpost moved again. You know, something goes from likes to being called connects, to being called followers, being called. All these things are always evolving, which makes marketers look stupid because we pin our hats and our KPIs to one particular metric, and it always moves. So we have to know that it will always move. And the data is shrinking because we're getting fewer and fewer ways to track that information. So how do you respond to that? Well, what we say is you look for things like lift, basically says, where were we yesterday? Where are we today? We may not be able to explain exactly what caused it. There's no such thing as exact attribution, but if you can say, okay, here's our baseline. We get 1,000 website hits per day. And then we started doing this thing, and now we get 2,000 hits per day. Of course, you're going to say, well, we also did many things. Well, let's just do our best to figure out at what points those things happened. And so we can attribute the lift to those things, not specifically like, we did this campaign and got that many leads, because you can make that report and you can tell your boss, hey, look what happened, but you're lying to yourself. In most cases, you won't have that exact math. Now, what I've seen in my career is you'll have teams who can go years on those kind of KPIs to say, hey, boss, we launched this campaign and we got X number of leads. The boss doesn't know that you launched your campaign during your trade show. So no wonder why the numbers went up, or because you had a one hit viral video, numbers went up, but people take credit for that. And that doesn't last long. That's why we have so much turnover, because people hang their hats on the wrong numbers. The thing is, you have to be totally honest about what you can measure and what you can't measure, and keep your statistics broad enough to where when the goalpost moves, when things change, you don't have to change all your reports and all the things that you hung your measurement on because that thing changed. So my answer is a big no answer. I understand that. But overall, you have to understand that the goalpost will move, and you have to make sure whatever you set out to measure, it's broad enough to say, we're doing lots of stuff. And when we didn't do lots of stuff, we didn't get lots of results. Simple as that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Lee. And I want to go back to something that you included in the question, Junta. And that was about like the creative people tell the story. And I think that's a misconception of B2B marketers, is that there's a specific a group of people inside of marketing who kind of own and create that story. And I think the more that B2B marketers, regardless of what your responsibility is on the team, understand the skills of how to tell a story, can really, really be beneficial, because I think that's where the story really gets fragmented. So as Lee was talking about, like if you want to see lift, you have to see consistency and you have to see focus in that story. So when you go back to green team, here's Lee and I back on the farm, John Deere was super consistent with that bigger, broader story. And with a lot of B2B companies, what you'll see is a shift in strategy, a shift in objectives, and executives want to see that shift in marketing. So again, there's another element in what Lee was describing for these dynamics that are constantly changing, is the story itself is changing. And if you look at any of the great, most iconic stories that have been told over time, Harry Potter I mean, what, 7, 8 books, or, 7 that should have been 8 or something like that. This is a long tail story that the person was highly skilled in understanding how to tell and in creating a narrative, a story arc over a long period of time. So I think as we look at all of these elements that bubble up to that narrative, we have to understand and just appreciate that every marketer needs to understand the story and have the skills to be able to tell it, whether you're on ABM or you're on the, brand or social or whatever your role is, because that's a huge part of telling a cohesive story that attracts that attention over the 6, 12, 18 months that it takes for something to really connect and resonate. And I think that's something we don't always understand and look at and appreciate when we're looking at measurement, is how skilled are we at actually telling that story?
We have to have enough guts to say that won't happen. Like if back to the agency thing or even in-house, if executives say, we want to launch a content marketing campaign, I'll give you a budget for that. I want you to show me the results that you have in 3 months. You have to be able to say, it doesn't work that way. It's not going to happen. We can implement it and we can tell you what we've done so far, but don't set yourself up to expect results in 3 months. It's not going to happen. And so too many marketers, I think, especially in B2B, for rightfully so, they're worried about their jobs. So they're going to promise, we'll show you results. We're here. We're being paid for results. We're going to give you results. But then when it doesn't happen, where are you? So you have to have the experience and the wherewithal to say, that isn't how it works. You won't get those results. Here's what we can do.
I think that also ties into what we were talking about, like agency dynamics. An agency gets hired to show results in 3 months. And if you as a marketer don't understand that's not how it works, you can really churn through agencies, which isn't fair to anybody. And man, talk about super expensive. Like no B2B marketing team wants to churn through their budget like that. Yeah.
That's why being a practitioner is so important, or at least hiring one or having one on your team, right? Is critically important to understand those insights and how to work with agencies. Yeah.
And there are plenty of agencies who are great at this. I don't want to say every agency isn't qualified or doesn't do great work, but I think it's our responsibility on the brand side as B2B marketers to really understand what it is that we're looking for and expecting. And like Lee said, like what's realistic.
Yeah. And that's so important because for our agency, as we intake clients and discuss potential opportunities, we want to make sure their expectations are aligned, right, with ours. And so that, identifying that right client it would help with, helping you sleep at night, basically, and not pulling out your hair. As you can see, mine is not there, but all right.
I don't know if you guys sleep very well at night.
Yeah, I don't sleep very well at night either.